Hey everybody, and welcome to your next. I'm your host Jerome, and when I tell you you're in for a treat today, this is one of the rare instances where we go to our neighbors on the north. We've got a Canadian with us today, somebody in Toronto, Kerry Harris, and we met through LinkedIn. And I tell you, she reached out. I was like, I don't know. And then I started asking some more questions. I was like, this is getting interesting. And the more I talk to her, the more fascinated I become with her journey. Carrie's not had just one, but she's had two exits. And it's very interesting when you start thinking about the journey that people have, because I believe every exit journey is a similar path, but the way we experience it is very different. And so Carrie and I were talking. We're like, well, which one do we want to talk about? And she's still in the NDA on the most recent one. So that kind of put some of the shackles on what can be talked about for that one. But then as we dug into the first one, I was like, ooh, this is juicy. And so Carrie's been kind enough to lend us some time today so we can dig in and learn more about her exit journey. Carrie, how are you?
I'm excellent, Jerome, and thank you for having me. I think this is going to be lots of fun.
Well, I surely hope so. And I believe the listeners are going to learn a tremendous amount about exiting. So I usually open up the show and I kind of already stole the thunder, but so you had an exit, huh?
I did. Yes, I've had actually two, and then on the flip side, I've had four unsuccessful startups. So I keep building. So I don't know if it's an exit when you actually have to close a business down.
Oh, but it is. There's
Yeah.
only three ways out, right? Once you start, there's only three ways out. You close it, you give
Mhm.
it away, or you sell it. And
Yeah.
so we harp on that because a lot of people are like, "Oh, well, I'll just die." Like, well, that's still somebody has to do one of the three things, right? And
Mhm.
so I'm very clear on every business that gets started, there
Mhm.
is an exit associated with it. So you've had two, one early in your career, but you started out as an employee, which some people are like, oh no, I'm just going to leave high school or college and I'm going to start my own thing. But you started out as an employee, right?
I did, yeah, actually. And what's interesting? I teach at the Morissette Institute for Entrepreneurship, which is a accelerator program at the University of Western Ontario, Ivy Business School. And what's really interesting is that I was teaching this week. So these are young founders, and I usually teach once a cohort. Um, and they actually asked me, we haven't asked me anything after the class is over. And they actually asked me why I took a corporate job. And what my answer is, this is a long walk around the park to your question, but when I graduated from university, there was no ecosystem to be an entrepreneur. You got a job and you got an agency job or you got a corporate job, and that was it. Like no one I know actually went into business.
Yeah, and I think you can learn a lot of really cool skills and get an opportunity to learn how to run business,
Mhm.
um, because most people have no idea what they're doing when they get into business. And there's so many things that can stop you before you really get started or
Yeah,
ruin your reputation and make it so that people don't want to work with you. And,
yeah.
there's some guidance, there's some guardrails, there's some oversight when folks have jobs, especially like in your early 20s. Like it's really hard
Mhm.
to have some credibility out there in the space.
Oh, absolutely. And you don't have the emotional maturity, or you don't have any in the trenches experience. And so when I work with a lot of young founders, what I find is that they're smarter than they've ever been, but they're also remarkably ill-informed. They're naive about what it takes. So the challenge is that we live in a really complex business world now with so much changing, and a young founder also tends to be myopic. Now, I'm not saying old founders aren't myopic, because they are, but young founders are remarkable. They live in a bit of a bubble, which makes it difficult.
I think you're the only other person in the world that uses the word myopic.
Yes.
I love it because like some people don't realize how short-sighted they're being or how singularly focused they're being, and there's so many things that are impacting the decisions that they're making, and many times they're just oblivious to the fact that they're being impacted.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And their narrative, founders, and I've worked with founders that have been remarkably stubborn, remarkably resistant to change. I call them uncoachable, really, where they just refuse to give up on the narrative they have in their head. And I tell them, look, the skill set that got you to the first growth curve of your business is not going to get you to the second growth curve of your business because it requires a different skill set. But we even see we see huge big brands that are wrecked because the founder just is still myopic. Billion-dollar brands who go off the rails. RIM, which is a great example, BlackBerry, a great example of a Canadian company where the founders just refused to actually pivot or listen. Or WeWork, another great example of a brand that just cratered because the founder was just, well, WeWork's a bit different, but anyway. So yeah,
Evolve or die. That's part of
literally,
the game.
yeah.
So, what was your exit plan for leaving the company that you started out working for when you were ready to move on and become an entrepreneur?
So that's an interesting, that was a really interesting journey. And I think I was saying to you earlier, so I was young when I started that business, and I really had no business starting a business because I didn't know anything. The good news was my business partner knew how to start a business. He knew how to run a business. And so when we first started working together, he was 10 years older than me. Um, he was a mentor to me. He was a quiet mentor. And it took about 2 or 3 years before we actually became business partners. And he actually really kind of, I'm going to say, educated me on how to run a business because I didn't know how to run a business before that. I had no idea. I didn't know how to read a balance sheet, despite having built an in-house business unit at a very large agency. So I was young and I was eager to learn. The business grew really quickly. I mean, we did we were an international communications management agency doing work all over the world. So our clients were in the Caribbean. We had an office in the Bahamas for about 6, 7 years, worked with the Ministry of Economic Development and Trade in the Bahamas. We worked with Bahamas Financial Services Board. So we had really interesting international clients, and I was traveling all the time. And by traveling, I was learning. But at about year 8, a couple of things became apparent to me. The first one was that our Rolodex was getting stale from a new business development point of view, and that if we wanted to continue to grow the business, we would have to make a decision. We would have to choose a new strategy for growth. We would have to bring on new partners, equity partners, who could bring new Rolodexes. We would have to acquire another business or merge with a business, or we would have to be acquired. And so that's the discussions we started at year 8. So the business plateaued. I it was very pragmatic to me. It was a very logical discussion, but this is where the challenges started. So my business partner didn't agree with me. He didn't, yeah, he did not want any of those options. He wanted to continue on and stay the course. And I could see what was coming. I could see we were going to get into white water if we didn't do something drastic. So we talked to a couple of our senior people. Did they want to buy into the agency? They didn't. We had long discussions about acquiring or partnering with a couple of small agencies. That didn't happen. So that left us the third option, which was to be acquired. So fortunately, we were working very closely with a US-based agency. We were their Canadian arm. And the plan was that when we were ready, they would acquire us. So we called them and we said, okay, we're ready. Let's talk about it. So, and this is where it gets interesting. We got all the way to, we were in the middle of due diligence with this agency, and they knew us well. They had been working with us for 5 years, knew us really well. Um, and we were getting ready to sign the paperwork to be acquired. And I remember this, I'll never forget this day. I was in the BVI, I was in Tortola on business, and I was sitting in my hotel room, and the agency president that we were talking to called me and said, "Are you sitting down?" And I thought, "Oh, this can't be good." And he said to me, "You are not going to believe this. We just got acquired. We got acquired." So the holdco that they worked, yeah, that they worked with, got acquired by IPG. So this was a company called Bozell Sawyer Miller Group. Um, and BSMG had a PR arm, and that's who we were working with. Well, BSMG got acquired by IPG, but they didn't know. BSMG didn't know. So they just, down the road they went with us. And I remember thinking, I'm going to make my first $1 million, before I'm like, just when I'm turning 40. And it just went, that was it, out the window. And he said, the deal, we have to cancel yeah, we have to cancel the deal. I'm so sorry. I don't know what to tell you, but when you get back to Toronto, let's talk. So we flew to New York. My partner Dan and I, we flew to New York and sat with them and said, look, well, can we not be BSMG, IPG's Toronto arm, like whatever they do with you? And they said, no, they already have a Canadian entity. Yeah. So that was the first. That was the first exit I went through. So it
So,
didn't pan out. Yeah.
why did he need to call you while you were on vacation? Or were you working in BBI?
I was working. I was working in Tortola. I was working in BVI. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
no,
thought
I
you
was
were on
working.
vacation. I was like, what in the
Yeah.
world? So, it, the first deal usually falls apart, right?
Yeah.
So, but nobody
Yeah.
really talks about that. They're like, oh yeah, the first one that goes through is perfect. It's automatic. Everything's gonna go as planned. Uh,
Yeah.
but when you think you're gonna be acquired, there's this sense of an impending relief, right? There's this thought that you're getting close to the end of the race. You're going to
Mhm.
cross that finish line. Whatever
Yep.
financial pressure that is there is going to be uh,
Gone.
pushed to the wind, and you're just going to be rolling in, and you won't have a worry or a care. And
Yep.
instead of that, you realize pretty quickly that you had to do something different, which was continue to endure the marathon.
Exactly. And so, and it was a perfect exit. So, agencies at that time were being bought on average 3 years EBITDA with a multiplier, and we got a really good multiplier. It was a high multiplier because there was a lot of consolidation going on. And so I even had my earnout, mapped out. And the good news was that I didn't have to go with the business. So I didn't have, Dan was going to stay on. I didn't have to go with the business because I wanted to go back to university. I had applied to Parsons in New York, and I was going to go back to school and take interior design. So I had applied, I got accepted. I was looking at apartments in New York. Like, I mean, we were way down the path, and I was waiting for that first balloon payment. So yeah. So then you realize, yeah, holy crap. I have to go back to the drawing board, and oh, the 2 years, then the next 2 years were like painful, painful. Because then we had to go back and revisit, okay, I hadn't changed my mind. I knew that we had to do something. So yeah, so then we hired a professional and said, sell us, get us acquired, sell us. Yeah. So we put ourselves on the market, you know,
How
and
did you get your partner on board?
um, it was a combination of I'm going anyway. So whether you want to do this or not, I'm moving on because we cannot continue. That's where it got to. It got to that point where it was like, okay, you don't want any of these options and you have to stop sabotaging the business. So let me be frank with you. We choose one and we follow it through, or I'm leaving anyway, or I'm leaving regardless of this because I need to move on. I can't, I wanted a bigger playing field. I mean, we had been playing on a really big playing field with our clients. They were incredible clients, but I was hungry for more challenges, more energy, more expertise, different viewpoints, you know? Um, so that's what got him on board. I basically just said, I'm drawing a line in the sand. This matters to me. So either we pursue one of these options or I will leave. You're gonna have to buy me out.
Did that go well?
No, it didn't go well. So, you know, we went from, and we spent so much time together. People thought we were married. So we would go places. We would arrive at hotels when we were traveling on business, and people would say to us, "Well, how long have you been married?" Or, you know, your room is ready. And so I would say, "Listen, I've been married for I don't know 8 years," and he would say, "Oh, he's been married for 20," because we had no idea. Like people would, you know, but the energy was so good. That's what allowed us to build the business. But that went south for all kinds of reasons. That went south. So the last 2 years were really painful. So we hired someone, we started taking meetings, and those meetings were painful. So if you've ever, you know, if you've ever been to those kind of acquisition meetings, oh, yeah. So we went through about 18 months of them, and we finally got an offer that we both liked. So it was interesting. It was a private equity group. Interestingly enough, one of the it was one of the clients that was very supportive of us. Um, he he was chairman of a private bank in the Bahamas and introduced us to a private equity group, and they wanted to add the agency to their stable. So yeah,
Wow.
I know.
Wow.
I know.
So, I mean, you said basically I'm out, um, and you either get with the program or not. I think
Yeah.
most people don't have the courage to do such a thing. What was it that gave you the confidence that you could force your way?
You know, it's interesting because I had a good thing going. When you think about it, the agency was really profitable. And we were dropping 25% to the bottom line, which is unheard of for a PR agency because it's professional services. It's very difficult to get those margins together. But because we were getting paid in US dollars, most of our clients, we were very profitable. We had 27 consultants working for us, incredible clients, you know, like we had a lifestyle and tourism division that would have knocked your socks off. I mean, Jamaica Tourist Board, Wines of South Africa, Wines of Chile. You know, we had SATUR, which is the South African Tourism Commission. Yeah, I mean, we were I could like I spent most of my days on the road. We were still doing a lot of work for the Bahamas. So it was a really cushy life, but for me, I wanted more. And it was this gnawing feeling that if I don't actually course correct, I will be here until I'm too old to go anywhere else. I just had this burning need to play on a different field. You know, just to be stretched and challenged. And so I think that's what led me to that. I'm a bit of a shark. The fact that I stayed for 10 years in that business is for me was unparalleled because I'm not a deep diver, I'm a shark. So I like to move on the surface of things. I know a lot of things about a lot of things, but they're only an inch deep. You know, I don't like to do a deep dive. I've always been like that. So the fact that I actually stayed for 10 years was, you know, people who know me well are like, I can't believe you stayed for 10 years. But I stayed because it kept me engaged and I was learning and I was traveling and I was, you know, I met some of the most amazing people during that time. And so, but it just got so overwhelming that I was like, I have to go. I can't. I can't stay in this. It's going to kill me. Like I will die if I stay in this, or I will
Mm.
kill him. Yeah, I will.
So you guys go on the market, you run a process, you get on the market, you get multiple offers, you get one offer. Like, how does it play out?
We got multiple offers. Two of them were so bad. Like one of them was for our book of business, which was ridiculous. Like, why would we, we're selling you the potential of the book of business. That's not how agencies are valued. Like, our again, 3 years average EBITDA plus a multiple. That's how agencies typically are sold. That's how they were sold then. The marketplace was good. Market momentum was looking in our favor. Spends were up. We had a very diverse group of clients who had been with us for a long time. So we had stable income. We had a good balance between project work and retainer work, which is always critical. So the business looked good, on paper. And I remember sitting in that meeting and getting this offer after many, many weeks of talks, because the talks go on forever. And they put I'll never forget this, we're in the meeting and there's lawyers and they put this piece of paper and they slide it across the table. And I looked at it and I was like, you're gonna have to bleep this. Like, because is it okay for me to tell you what I said?
Of course.
I said, what the fuck? That's what I said out loud. What the fuck? And yeah, the founder, I mean, this was a huge Canadian, like a Canadian multinational called National PR, big, held by a holdco, like based in Montreal. They were big. National Toronto was the largest PR agency in Toronto at the time. And I just was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Of course, my partner, Dan, he's like kicking me under the table. Kerry, stop. Because I just had at that point in time, there's no filter between brain and mouth. And I had, one of the things he said to me after we left that meeting was, you have got to be less emotional. You can't be emotional about this. Like, you can't take this personally. I'm like, how can I not take this personally? We spent like 10 years building this business. And this, you know, buckethead across the table thinks that he can get this business for book, or, the book value. So that one went off the rails. Then we got another offer from a very large ad agency who wanted us because of our Caribbean business. They had a lot of business in the Caribbean. And they thought this will be a perfect to acquire arm of us. And they did make us an offer. And it was a good offer. But Dan, my partner, he didn't want to go there. I mean, we got all the way to an offer. He did not want to go there. And it was a fair offer. I would have taken it. And then the private equity group. So yeah, they came forward and said, look, we'll acquire you. We're gonna merge you with one of our, and they actually bought uh the earnout was so low for both of us. Like they wanted the business and the clients and they felt confident that they were willing to keep the team, which was great, but they just wanted to drop it into their little microcosm ecosystem, which is what they did.
And so you got to walk away with a clean deal, or you had to
It,
stay?
no, I got to walk away with a clean deal. Dan stayed on for 2 years and I got to walk away. Yeah. So, but I'm going to tell you two things I learned. One is it's really easy to get into a business. It's not easy to get out of a business. And
Ooh, say that again for the listeners, because I think so many
I,
people feel like as soon as I'm ready, magically this thing's gonna just go the way
nope,
I want it to go, and people are gonna be lined up to get it
nope,
and pay me more than I think I need.
nope, nope, no. It's like selling your house. Your business is only worth what the marketplace will pay for it. So what I was saying was it's easy to get into a business. It's difficult to get out. And what actually killed me in those last couple of years of trying to sell the business was that I was not the majority partner. So I owned 40% of the business. Dan owned 60. Now we split the profits equally. That was at my insistence. I said I'm not gonna I think equal work, equal profit sharing. But in the partnership agreement, he had the last word on any macro strategic decisions, which included exiting. And he exercised that. And that's what eventually killed us. We didn't speak for 2 years after the business was sold because
Because of like tough feelings or hard feelings?
yeah, he kept exercise. So he would say to me, you know what? Yes, I'll agree to this, but then he would passively aggressively sabotage it. So we'd go to meetings and he'd be a dick.
Wow.
Like the DJP meeting we went to, they were super keen to acquire us. Yeah, but he was a dick. Like he was such a dick. And he was not a dick in real life. Like he was a wonderful, soft-spoken, smart man, but he did not want anything to change. He did not want it to change.
Well, what's
He was it.
fascinating is you got the counsel of not being emotional, but what was done was
Yeah,
emotional, right? It's just done in a
like,
different way.
yeah,
Maybe a
exactly.
little more passive aggressive, maybe a little more finesse, but the outcome is the same, even if
Mhm.
people don't realize on the surface what's happening. If you start peeling the layers, it becomes very clear what's happening. And
Exactly.
we watch that happen with founders who don't have partners, where they sabotage the deal because they're scared
Mhm.
about what they were going to do next. It's interesting that he stayed with the company, and so his path was
Mhm.
pretty defined post exit, and yours wasn't. Usually, what we see is people don't know what they're going to do when
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
descending from the peak of their
Mhm.
corporate or their company's trajectory, that
Mhm.
they get very, very uncomfortable and start doing what people would call erratic things. Um,
Yeah.
Man, that's crazy. So, but you got out.
Mhm.
Were you able to complete the path of doing this interior design stuff, or did you
No,
have to pivot because the window closed?
I had to pivot because the window closed, and so I remember packing up my office after 10 years of working basically this business was my identity. I was 10 years. I was a partner at DBA Communications. I knew my place in the world. And I remember packing up my office and transferring files and then I went home and I remember waking up the next day and thinking, holy crap, like who am I? I didn't have a business card. Like for the
Right.
first time in a long, I didn't have a business card. I was like, well, like, who are you? You have no place to go. You have no, you didn't make enough money that you could stop working. I made enough money. I could not work for a couple of years, but that was, I wanted to work. I wanted to go on to something new. So I remember sitting there in my dining room and thinking, okay, now what? And that just actually that was a really hard time because and this is a weird thing on the personal side. So that year that I sold my business, I said to my friends, I got two divorces that year. I got a divorce from my business partner and I got a divorce from my first husband. Yes, at the same time, same year. Yeah. So
Enough is enough.
I
I'm done
know
with all of you.
exactly. I was like, holy crap. So, yeah. So I was really sort of going through this existential period. And what was really interesting was one of the companies, GJP, who wanted to buy us, as soon as they found out we got acquired, they called me and said, come and work for us. And I was like, what? And they're like, come and work for us. And I said, I don't know if I want to come and work full time. And they said, well, then come as a consultant. like, we'll give you a year contract. Come and work with us as a consultant. So I did.
You didn't have a non-compete?
No, no, that's the stupidest thing. I had no non-compete. No, because it was a private equity group that was buying us, they didn't really understand the agency ecosystem. So if we got bought by another agency, I would have been, papered up the butt.
Toast.
But yeah, no, nothing. So I honestly, I took a month off and then I went to work for them for a year because I thought, I really don't know what I want to do. So yeah, maybe they were going through a rebrand. So I said, yeah, I'll take that on. And I'll do new business development for you because it'll be fun. So I did that for a year. Then they offered me a full-time role as a CEO. And I said, yeah, no, I don't want to come and I don't want to work for another agency. And so then I went and I joined a strategy firm. So another startup. But so I joined a brand strategy firm called Level Five, and there were five of us, five partners. And I was there for a year, and I got my certification in strategic planning. I always liked to do strategy, but I got to formalize that. And then after a year, I remember thinking, um, I miss working with clients. I miss rolling up my sleeves. I miss working with clients because strategy work is really solitary. And these were big strategy projects, like $1 million strategy projects. So it's, as you can imagine, it's all research focused. So I liked it, I enjoyed it, but I remember thinking I need to do something else. So I got a job offer to go to Weber Shandwick, Canada, as their new president. So I took it because I thought, I've done the entrepreneurial thing. Maybe I should go back to corporate. And the idea of doing the corner office, the big job, that was kind of very appealing. So I went there and they were parked. It was an agency that was parked and they really needed to be reactivated. So I thought, yeah, I could do that. So I said, I'll double the size of the business in 5 years. And then you bring me to New York and you give me a global brand strategy role. And they went, done. Yeah. So then 2008 hit. Ooh, remember 2008?
Everything slowed down. It was no fun.
Was a bloodbath. That was not a good time to be running a publicly traded multinational business unit.
No.
It was a bloodbath. Yeah. Canada was the only business unit that was profitable over those 2 years because we didn't have the same issues that you had in the US. No subprime, no asset-backed securities. So we didn't have that. Our banking system is much tighter. But I worked on the Microsoft business globally. I worked on a number of businesses globally that were US based businesses, and man, oh man. But talk about talk about learning again. So going from an entrepreneur into a corporate environment where you live and die by your quarterly reporting. It was a lesson in grown up, how to grow up. I thought I knew how to run a business, but going there, phew, yeah. So I did that for 5 years.
The skilled sailor is in choppy seas,
Yeah,
not when
oh,
it's
hell yeah.
smooth.
Oh my God. Yeah. I used to get up and go to the office in the morning and I just remember thinking, like, where's the tsunami gonna happen today? Like, where's the.
So, did you enjoy that though? Like, was that better than running your own thing without the partner and without the oversight? And like, that path is usually a struggle for founders because you got
Mm,
to take request time off and do expense reports, and those seem like
mm,
minute things, but when you've been the boss for 10, 15, 30 years,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's a nuance that you don't want to participate in.
Oh, it was a tough, tough, tough transition. For the first 2 years, 2.5 years was amazing. Part of the perks that I got as president was that I got a certain number of coaching hours every month. And so but you had to choose from a list of coaches that they approved. Classic big corporate oversight. So I'm working with this coach, and so we do all the analysis and all that good stuff. And the first thing she tells me? You were spectacularly not suited for this job. Yes, yes, because you are a truth teller and you are a catalyst for growth. And both of those things, well, particularly the truth teller, is not welcome in a corporate environment. It's just not. So, yeah. So she said, you're going to get to year three and you are so going to struggle because you're really an entrepreneur at heart. And your personality type is such that, you don't feel like I'm an ENTJ in Myers-Briggs speak. Vast majority of founders, successful entrepreneurs are ENTJs. And so she said that is not suited to steady growth, growing a business. You're not an operator, you're an entrepreneur. So, and she was right. So the last 2 years were hell on wheels. It was soul sucking. Never went on vacation without my phone, never. Yeah. So
So, how did you extract yourself from that?
I resigned. So I walked away after 5 years, a massive big job, corner office. I thought, again, it was the same imperative that I felt when I was trying to sell my business. I was like, I'm I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I'm done, 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 done. So I resigned. And now the good news was that I had a big job to go to. Um, But yeah, I sent my letter. I remember sitting in my office and, your finger hovers over the letter of resignation and your computer. I remember, and I went, gink. Not even 30 seconds later, my boss called me. 30
What are you
seconds.
doing?
Yes. Are you insane? Are you crazy? What are
I
you
do not
doing?
accept.
She said, what is it going to take to get you to stay? Like, do you want more money? Do you want to you know, buy more offices in Canada? Like, what do you need? And I said, nope, I'm done. I can't. I, I'm not the right person for this job anymore. And I felt like I wasn't what my team needed. I had 5 offices in Canada. I wasn't what the team needed. They needed somebody who was invested and enthusiastic and energetic. Meanwhile, here's me managing this agency, doing free pro bono brand strategy work on the side. Do you know how many of my friends' businesses I helped shape during that time? Because I was so bored. So, what does that tell you? Yeah. And I do it for
Well, it
free.
tells me that you knew what you should be doing and what you wanted to do,
Exactly.
even if you weren't getting
Exactly.
paid to do it.
Yeah. So I started my first sidebar venture, an app. I built an app called Scout. Um, it was a funny little app. Got funding for it, built it. And that was my first sort of shot at, oh, this is a lot more complicated than I thought. Building technology is a tough thing. And then right after I left, I built my second. I built a business called jobjar.com. So it was a web platform, matches homeowners with contractors, homeowners who need jobs done. It was too early, way before its time. We couldn't get funding. We got funding to build it. Then I launched Chirp, which was a virtual man cave for men during sporting events. Yeah, yeah, that was an interesting. And we got absolutely annihilated by Twitch. Annihilated. We skinned it for esports. So basically, if you're a guy or a woman, doesn't matter, you could create a room and you could invite all your friends in, and it was a closed room, invite only, and you could chirp during a sporting event because it was a virtual place. I called it a virtual man cave, and we launched it during one of the World Cups of soccer. Took off, but the problem was getting feeds, so it's hard to get sports feeds. You have to pay a lot of money for them, and they won't just give them to anyone. So we skinned it for esports because we could plug into to a bunch of esports feeds, which was great. I learned a lot about esports. And then Twitch got a handle on us and they annihilated us. They went after us legally. Yeah, that was a bad situation. So don't poke the bear because they'll. And I
Mm.
said, why don't you buy us? It's buy us. Like it's there, it's built, buy us. And they were like, yeah, no.
We're
So
gonna crush you.
we're gonna crush you. And they crushed us. Yeah. So
Jeez.
I know.
And so now you found your people in the problem. So what are you doing now?
So I always had two businesses that were running at the same time. So a strategy consulting group, which I love, and I typically tend to work with businesses at a crossroads. And actually, what's really interesting is I work with a lot of businesses to get them ready to be acquired because they don't they just don't have a clue how to do that. They don't even understand how to write an investor deck and then I also work with startups. So how to write an investor deck, how to do a pitch, all that good stuff like that. So that's one of my businesses. And then in 2018, I started Smart Structuring, which was a SaaS company that what we did was very niche. We created a blockchain enabled trust management platform. So in the wealth structuring, it's wealth tech. So in the wealth
Mm.
structuring, wealth preservation space. So my two partners, our dev team is in Buenos Aires. My CTO is in Buenos Aires. The company was headquartered in Miami, North Miami, and my other partner is a trust lawyer. And so this was a for us, by us. So he has five offices. He's a trust lawyer. He was looking for a piece of technology that would allow him to move trust management from the paper state that it's still in, I kid you not, to, the digital age. And so we built it. And we raised two rounds and I'll never forget this. Talk about, my timing is impeccable. So it was ready in you got it, April of 2020. Yeah. Yeah. So I
Well, it needed
remember
to be digital going forward from that because nobody was getting face to face.
no, but the trust management space is face to face.
Yeah.
It's not a digital space, it's face to face. So we were put on hold for about 18 months. We finally got out into the market in October, November of 2021, and then we went from there. So, but it was a great learning curve. The platform itself was beautiful, gorgeous. The dev team in Buenos Aires called Dig Bank did a great job. But again, we were in that classic position where, the runway was too short for what we needed to do. So we started looking. We had to make a decision, and so again, we started looking to be acquired. So we talked to a lot of different, I'm going to call them complementary companies that were already in the space of fintech, wealth tech, but the organization, and we'll be able to make an announcement on that probably in another 6 weeks, maybe 2 months. So I apologize for being early on here. Um, but they're a category killer. They're a
Mm.
huge, they're probably acquiring, I don't know. They're like a vacuum cleaner, hoovering up. And then like early stage companies, because they can just add them to, they
Bolt
add them
on.
to the roster. They had a complementary product that's a fintech leg tech product, and they're gonna put us together with them. So, and that process was very, very smooth, not painful, because it was the business was built properly. You know, the data
So
room,
go ahead, keep going.
I was just gonna say that the cap table was clean, you know, small investor group, the business was just well managed, well run. We're dealing in a space that's highly regulated,
Mhm.
and so it has to be. And so it made actually that due diligence process very easy.
So if we go back, I want to go back to the backside of the first exit because you had two things that for most people they struggle with just doing one of them, but you did two at the same time.
Yeah.
Did you? And it seems like you do multiple things at the same time as a general rule because
Always.
you like to have fun. But
Yeah.
like, did you initially had your plan for what was going to happen post exit?
Hmm.
It didn't seem like you truly had a plan for what was going to happen post exit when you actually got there.
True.
Do you feel like things would have gone smoother or it would have been less stressful or you would have enjoyed the descent from the apex of selling the company had you had a plan?
I don't think so. I think that there's two things that happen when you exit a company. The first is the pragmatic, practical aspect of understanding, on paper, what does that exit look like? And then it's easy to plan based on that. But the flip side of that is the emotional side of an exit.
Mhm.
And that throws a monkey wrench into everything. I thought, okay, I have a plan. I have funds available. I have a total green field to do what I want.
Yeah.
And I've been wanting this for I could have traveled for 6 months. I could have yeah. But the emotional impact of actually waking up and knowing that I didn't have any place to go. I didn't
Mhm.
have a purpose. No one was going to call me and say, you know, Carry XYZ or whatever. It absolutely floored me. And I
Mhm.
was exhausted. I was emotionally exhausted from fighting with Dan.
Mhm.
Like emotionally exhausted. It shouldn't have been that difficult to 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 exit. It shouldn't have been, you
Mhm.
know. And I think I I just kept on going, during those 2 years. And then when it all came to pass, I was like, I didn't realize how tired I was. And I was exhausted. So emotionally, I was thinking, okay, well, here, what are you so fuffed about? Like you got, you got what you wanted. You have some funds. You're young. You can do this all over again. But I also was missing my partner and my friend because that relationship was detonated. And so I didn't have that person in my life. I was dealing with the end of my marriage, and my daughter, um, helping her deal with the end of my marriage. Although I had a very amicable divorce, like it was very amicable. Um, but even so, I was married for 11 years. So it's funny, huh? I had a business for 10 years and I was married for 11 years. So, um, that's a lot of fabric to take apart because when you have a business, you weave a fabric. I was missing my girls. I still meet with my DBA girls. We still meet. I'm not kidding you. Yeah,
Those
we
usually
still
go
meet.
away. Those
I know.
relationships usually go away post exit. They truly
Yeah,
were friends, right? Like,
truly, truly. We had a young consultant group, and the core of them, there were about 8 of them. I call them my DBA old girls, and we still see each other. And they're all running agencies now. They're all super successful. Yeah. So, but I was missing them because I saw them every day. I missed my clients because I spent so much time with them. Um, yeah, it was really interesting. The emotional side of it, the loss and dealing with that and dealing with having to put that aside to move forward.
Yeah, I mean, we call it the founder's exit paradox, right? There's this great thing that's
Hmm.
happening, and then there's all this other stuff that's happening that you don't want anybody to talk about. It just kind of runs under the surface. Other
Yeah.
founders don't tell you about it, and we just see so many people unprepared for it. And
Hmm.
you mentioned having your identity attached to the business, not having a
Hmm.
place to go. Fortunately, you were able to keep some of the relationships, but the folks that you're talking about maintaining the relationships with, they weren't from the partnership with your, they weren't from that initial
Hmm.
company. Oh, they
They
were.
were.
Okay, okay.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And they stayed on. So, they stayed on and some of them left, some of them stayed on. Some of them left because they didn't really want to work in this new ecosystem. And also too, Dan was a very much an introvert. I was kind of the mom, the mother hen of the office. And they thought, I guess some of them thought, well, you know what, maybe it's time for me to move on too. So some of them did. So, eventually all of them left, which is normal. It's really normal. So, yeah, and you're exactly right. It is the founder's exit paradox. And it should be talked about more. I wish that I had had a coach like you. Like honest to God, because I could have used some level-headed, clear thinking and support because no one knew what I was going through. And they all thought I was,
Nobody knows what you're going through, and you're
yeah.
scared to tell people what you're
Mm-hmm.
going through because it's tone deaf. It's like you
Mm-hmm.
got everything figured out. You just had to exit. And most people have no idea what you actually finish with, right? And we don't ever ask what people finish with because it doesn't, from my perspective, it doesn't ever really matter. You
Mm-hmm.
still have that perception of, oh, well, you got all the things and you got all the time and you're free and you can do whatever you want. It's like, yeah, but as soon as you say but, they kind of look at you confused. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, if you pull back the curtain, you'll see stuff that
Mm-hmm.
you probably wouldn't aspire to, but it is part of the reality of the exit. That journey is taxing, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not only the journey down. Well, it's funny. I was doing some writing this morning, and what I realized is like people like climb Kilimanjaro or some of the other large, tall mountains, they
Mm-hmm.
don't usually die on the way up. It's after they summit and then it's on the way down, right?
Yeah.
They are distracted from
Mm-hmm.
what they saw when they got there, and they're tired from the trip up, and maybe they become a little more loose or careless. And if they don't have a descent plan,
Mm-hmm.
then they end up getting themselves hurt with the altitude change. And once you go, everything that goes up comes back down, and
Yeah.
most people only think about up. And unfortunately, you can't just go from one apex to the other, right? You can't go from one mountain
Mm-hmm.
peak to the other. You've got to go back down into the valley and then begin your ascent again. Now, how deep you go into the valley is a different conversation, right? Like there can be bridges in between things, and like you can actually not experience all of the downside or being in the shadows, the doom, the gloom.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a conversation probably for another day. But Carrie, your journey is what I see as representative for what founders experience and what
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurs go through. And the way that you told it with such authenticity and transparency, I'm deeply grateful for it, because most people would try to cut off the highs and the lows and just kind of stay in this middle piece. And maybe
Yeah.
they wouldn't even cut off the highs, they just want to show the stuff
Mm-hmm.
that's good for their highlight reel. And you gave the truth about the experience, the thing that we see behind the curtain when we're working with founders on that journey, and the thing that we want to warn so many people about. So I'm so
Mm-hmm.
grateful for you opening up in the way that you have. And it's funny because you called yourself a shark, but I see you as a pretty kind and caring person, even if you don't want to go deep into the details. And
Mhm.
I think the world just needs more examples of compassion. I don't think you have to
Mhm.
be a jerk to be a great
No,
business person. And
yeah.
I think you can actually help so many more people when you're open to them being able to share who they are and what they're about. And so, thank you so much for being that example.
You're welcome. This has been super amounts of fun. A
Oh,
good conversation.
we knew that going in that this was going to be fun.
Yes,
So we talked about it a little
yeah.
bit before we hit record. I if you the listeners out there, they're curious. I know you're helping business owners. So if they want to find out more about how you're helping business owners, either on both ends of the spectrum, readying for sale or
Mhm.
starting up, what's the best way to do that?
I would say connect with me on LinkedIn and shoot me a note, and I'm always eager for a con or happy to have a conversation. I'm so grateful for the people that I meet on LinkedIn, and some of the conversations I have, like we started on LinkedIn. So yeah, so connect with me, and yeah, shoot me a DM.
Carrie's not a bot. She's real.
I'm not a bot. I am real. You know what? And I think I'm probably old school, when it comes to like I don't have like I'm not super active on Instagram. I don't do TikTok. I'm on Facebook because I keep tabs on my mother. But I do like LinkedIn, and I do a lot of writing. So if you really want some unfiltered, people are constantly saying to me, how do you get away with writing what you write on LinkedIn? And I said, well, I don't work for anybody. My LinkedIn posts are really unfiltered, and I'm working on another one. So they're yeah, it's always kind of uh, a, a good way to get to know a little bit about how I think irreverent I am. But see, I'm old, so I can be irreverent. And that's one of the things you earn when you get old.
Yeah, I don't think you're old. I think you've got a great spirit and amazing energy. Carrie, this has been awesome. Again, thank you so much for sharing
You.
your story with us.
You are welcome, and you have a great day.
You too. To our listeners, your dreams should be real. We'll catch you on the next episode.